Добрий вечір. Ми маємо можливість представити перед вами чергове видання своєї серії «Бібліотека командира», яке ми започаткували 2008 року, бажаючи якось підготувати своїх співгромадян до того, що їх чекає. На жаль, це сталося. І десь особисто я і мої колеги сприймаємо це як свою особисту поразку, що це таки сталося. Однак це вже є, і ми мусимо до цього бути тепер тільки готові і сприймати цей виклик як частину свого життя, яка є просто неуникненна. Про що ці книги? І ми маємо, це насамперед книги про те, як живе воїн у своєму тілі, в своєму дусі. До чого він має бути готовий для того, щоб не попасти під вплив того, що я називаю комплексом Ремарка. Це окрема тема, і ми можемо про це говорити окремо, і напевно це буде результат всієї цієї серії видань, які ми будемо далі видавати, ми про це поговоримо. Можливо, це буде своєрідне відкриття в теорії війни. Однак зараз це одне із видань. І перед нами є автор цього видання, цієї книги. Чим він вважає, який його внесок в історію людської думки? Це він охоплює терміном «наука про вбивство». Це те, що ми дуже часто сприймаємо як особливу форму переступу, однак тим покликані займатися люди, які роблять для свого народу велике добро. Вони забезпечують просто основи його існування. Однак мають мати справу з тим, що середньостатистична людина зазвичай засуджує. Це воїни. Відповідно, вони потрапляють в ту колізію морального сприйняття вбивства і, відповідно, несуть на собі тягар цієї суспільної думки. Тягар всіх громадян, які як ніколи в небезпечній ситуації потребують воїна і які дуже пафосно заперечують вбивство, що роблять його професією. І яка ціна для воїна, яку він мусить сплатити, виконуючи свій обов'язок, це в тому числі тема цієї книги. Це тема дуже багатьох книг. Однак в цих двох книгах ця проблема розвивається, дискутується концентровано. Ідея можливість, яким чином впорядкувати наше мислення у ставленні до такої драматичної події, як смерть, як вбивство. Щоб якось представити Дейва, я просто прочитаю те, що він говорить сам про себе. Не буду говорити багато слів. Я в дорозі майже 300 днів на рік. Я навчаю військових психології і фізіології ведення бою. Серед них зелені берети, рейнджери, морські піхотинці, пілоти-винищувачі та багато інших. А також співробітники правоохоронних органів, зокрема ФБР, Бюро контролю за алкоголем, тютюновими виробами та зброєю, підрозділи спеціальної зброї і тактики, Каліфорнійського магістрального патруля та Королівської канадської кінної поліції. Це чудова робота і для мене велика честь і відповідальність виконувати її. Я вчу їх, і вони вчать мене. Це нескінченне і постійне взаємовдосконалювання. Я придумав термін «куленепробивний розум», щоб описати ту сукупність знань, які постійно розширюються і які викладаю я цим воїнам. Аудіокасета та компактний диск із такою самою назвою стали національним бестселером у правоохоронних органах Сполучених Штатів. Я не можу повною мірою висловити свою вдячність усім правоохоронцям, солдатам та іншим особам, які виявили бажання поділитися зі мною найсокровеннішими подробицями власного бойового досвіду. Вони довірили мені розповіді та інформацію, які становлять суть цієї книги. Так що Дейв Гроссман скаже про свої відкриття щодо людського тіла і людського розуму в умовах інтенсивних бойових дій на найтоксичнішому полі, яке може потрапити людина. Це поле бою.
Thank you, Олег. Слава Україні! It is my great honor to be here with you today. Ole is the publisher of my book. This will be the 9th language that On Killing is translated into. It will be, I think, the 7th language that On Combat has been translated into. But I have never had a publisher like Ole. He's losing money on this. I paid my own way over here to be here today. We're not doing this for money. We're doing this because we believe. The Russians have contacted me twice to publish a Russian translation of my books, and both times I told them to go to hell. We are such firm believers in what is happening here. Some of you remember the movie 300 about the Spartans at Thermopylae. And there's a very famous scene told throughout history. The Spartan king, Leonidas, is standing there and the Persians said, "We honor you. You fought hard, you fought long. There's no need for you to die. Hand over your weapons and we will give you a place of honor in our army." And the Spartan king said, "Come and get him." 2,500 years later, those words are still remembered. I tell you, 500 years from now, people will remember your president saying, "I don't need a ride, I need ammo." Yeah. Those words will ring throughout history. And the astounding achievement of the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian armed forces in this war has truly stunned and astounded the world. Now, I want to take a few minutes to talk to you a little bit about what I can contribute. I am a U.S. law enforcement officer. I'm the only person ever to be certified to teach police in all 50 states, every federal agency. I've trained hundreds and hundreds of our units going back and forth from Iraq and Afghanistan. When Canada went to Afghanistan, it was Canada's first shooting war since Korea. They did everything they could to prepare their troops, including having me come and present to the 1st Regiment deploying to Afghanistan. A regimental commander told me that the troops came home, and we asked the lads, "Okay, what worked?" And they said, "Grossman." They told us what would happen to our mind, body, and combat. They told us what to do about it. And I've been brought back to train almost every single one of the Canadian units deploying back and forth across all these years. So these are the things that I want you to understand and know about combat. Now, Ola, let's go ahead and pull up, if you will, that first slide with the graphics. Yes. And these are perceptual distortions in combat. 85%, now these are police officers who have been in a gunfight, interviewed one by one afterwards, very, very comprehensively, in an environment in which they trusted and they were willing to give information that a lot of times people wouldn't give. And 85% were conscious of what we call auditory exclusion. The shots get quiet. Now, anybody ever been a hunter? Where are my hunters at? You ever hunt? No? A few? Yeah. Hunters have found out that you fire your hunting rifle at the range one time without hearing protection, and your ears will ring for the rest of the day. You go to shoot a deer, it's a still, calm morning. Boom! People a mile away hear the shot. Hunter, what do you hear? Nothing. And ears don't ring. Now, of course, the same thing is happening in combat. Now, how could we have had 500 years of gunpowder combat and not let people know that their shots get muted? Understand? This is moving into areas we've never been before, preparing people ahead of time so these things don't astound you and overwhelm you. But 85% had that tremendous sound effect, but look, 16% had intensified sound. I'm an old sergeant and came up through the ranks, and even an old sergeant could figure out that adds up to 101%. Sometimes both happen. I believe I've interviewed more people who've been in combat than anyone in human history. I retired from our Army in 1997, and I've conducted hundreds of interviews for my book on killing. Since I retired, I've been on the road over 200 days a year. And every day, a soldier, a police officer comes up to me and says, well, here's what it was like for me. Here's what happened to me. The ones that are a little bit different really have something to teach us. And every time both happen, auditory exclusion and the intensified sounds, it went like this. You're caught by surprise or an ambush. Boom, 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 shots overwhelming. You start shooting back, the shots get muted. The body will focus intensely on the sense it needs most for survival. When you start shooting, the eyes dial in, the ears dial out, and the shots get muted. These are things we need to know. Now, folks, 80% were conscious of tunnel vision. Now, we know the actual number is really quite a bit higher, but a lot of times people aren't even aware of it. Afterwards, they look at the video and say, oh, that was right in front of me. I never even noticed it. That's tunnel vision. People talk about looking through a tube about that big around. You know, the charging lion has tunnel vision. The charging lion is a heat-seeking missile. It locks onto its target and tracks that one thing. And this is what's happening in combat. Now, the enemy has tunnel vision too. And lateral movement can take you right off their radar screen. So if we bring fire on the enemy and then we maneuver around the flank, we're taking advantage of that, understand? Now, we break tunnel vision by scanning. And we train, you fire a shot and you scan. You drop a magazine and you reload and you scan. So it's important to have somebody who's watching your flanks, who's not necessarily fully involved in the battle. So these tunnel vision, bad guys have tunnel vision too. We bring fire on them, we maneuver around the flank, and we come up on their blind side. Now 74% have what we call autopilot. They did what they were trained to do without conscious thought. Now, a lot of times with police officers, they said the gun just appeared in my hand. Oh, they drew the weapon without conscious thought. And this is autopilot. You do not rise to the challenge. You sink to the level of your training. And our modern soldiers are trained to levels never seen before in history. And so we've got the autopilot dynamic. But we've got slow motion time. We've got around 65% had slow motion time. I have had hundreds of people tell me they see the bullet in combat. If you have ever done airsoft or paintball, and when it's slow enough, you track with your eyes, and that's what it's like. So this business of slow motion time, I was training NYPD and New York cops and a U.S. Marshals team that had recently been in a horrendous gunfight. And one of the marshals told me, she said, I was going down, it was in a warehouse, I was going down a narrow corridor, and a bad guy popped around the corner and shot at me. She says, I lay back and shot, and she says, I watched the bullet go past and clip my hair. She said, I watched that bullet go past and clip my hair. So this slow motion time, on several occasions, people have been able to walk up and point to where the bullet hit. No way they could have done that. They weren't tracking with their eyes like they said they were. Now, it gets pretty important here because 51%, 47% had memory gaps, blackouts, just things that they did not remember. Sometimes those will come back after a couple nights sleep. Sometimes it never comes back, and that's okay. But you are receiving so much data, and the body is filtering and focusing. There's just things that don't register. Now, this cut on down to the chase here, 22% had memory distortions. They just flat remembered things that did not happen. Remember something didn't happen. What's another word for that? Hallucinations? Lying? Yeah. You know, we had, about 15 years ago, we had somebody who was on a Navy SEAL team in Vietnam. And he said, I have to confess, after all these years, I have to confess that we slaughtered some people on this mission. We slaughtered some citizens. It was physically impossible for that to happen. The time frame didn't allow it, the location didn't allow it. Everybody else on the team said, no, that didn't happen, and it was clear that it did not happen. Now, how could one person remember this terrible thing? And nobody else did, you understand? Clearly, it did not happen. It wasn't physically possible for it to happen. Well, this is this business of memory distortion. Now, we have memory gaps and we have memory distortions. And one of the most important things we can do after combat is to do a debriefing. Now, in the U.S. Armed Forces, the British, the Canadians, they call it an after-action review, an AAR. Now, ideally, it's done at the squad level. Everybody gets together after combat, and they talk about what happened. In a training event, in training, the majority of the learning happens afterwards in the AAR. Everybody talks about what happened. I went here, I did that, here's what I saw. I should have done this. Oh, we could have done this. Oh, I didn't know that happened. And if we learn critical lessons in training, how much more so must we capture those lessons in actual combat? But in combat, one of the critical things we're doing is filling in the memory gaps and sorting out the memory distortions. And if people know ahead of time these things are going to happen, then they're ready to deal with them. So set aside the fact that someone's trying to kill you now. Just set aside the fact someone's trying to kill you. If you were sitting here right now, boom, auditory exclusion, slow motion time, tunnel vision, memory gaps, memory distortions, that would meet every definition of a psychotic episode. Just those things by themselves would scare the daylights out of you. The fact that somebody's trying to kill you is bad enough without your body doing weird and one thing they want to warn you about. But if you've been warned that might happen, then they're no big deal. And I give you case after case where people come up to me and said, I was in combat and it was just like you said. The auditory exclusion, the tunnel vision, the slow motion time. During the debriefing, people talked about things I didn't remember, and I was okay with that. And one guy said, there were one or two things I remembered. In the debriefing, everybody else said, no man, that didn't happen. He said, if I didn't know those memory distortions could happen, I would have spent the rest of my life thinking they all conspired to lie to me about some goofy little aspect of what happened. So you see how important it is to know these things ahead of time. It is really cutting edge information. But here's the key. We expect crazy things in combat. A week later, a month later, a year later, you re-experience the event. And that scares the daylights out of us. And we need to be warned about that. Now, let's talk about what's happening to the body under stress. I was a West Point psychology professor, and we said, what do we want all of our military officers to know about this psychology stuff. And way up in the list is this, the sympathetic nervous system. It's often called fight or flight. And the sympathetic nervous system is what kicks in under stress. Then we have the parasympathetic nervous system, sometimes called rest and digest, also called feed and breed. And we told our West Point cadets, think of your body like a military unit. These are the people in the front lines with the rifle. These are the maintenance people. They're the mechanics and the clerks and the cooks, right? When you're asleep at night, your unit is on stand-down. You're in maintenance mode. You wake up in the morning, and you have what we call homeostasis. You got some folks in the front lines with the rifle, you got some maintenance folks doing their job, back to sleep that night, wake up in the morning, and somebody tries to kill you. What happens? Boom. Total sympathetic nervous system arousal. And the further you come up there, boom. The further you come down there. Napoleon said, the moment of greatest vulnerability is immediately after victory. The moment of greatest vulnerability is immediately after victory. Why? Well, you let your guard down. It's more than just relaxing. It's an actual hormonal crash, and you can't get back up again. So obviously, we want to prevent that roller coaster ride. We don't want to go up there because we don't want to go down there. But sometimes that's combat, and things happen, and people die. And you go on that roller coaster ride. Now here's the key. When you were a kid, how many times did you have to touch a hot stove? Hot stove, one time. You touch that hot stove, whoa! And what happened was, it's called one trial learning. Whenever there's fear and pain associated, a neural network, a network of neurons is established. Well, if you think a neural network was established from touching a hot stove, how much more so might it be in combat? Arkansas State Trooper, first gunfight. Bad guy's down, he's alive. Happy ending to the story. He said, a week later, I'm sitting with my wife in the bleachers, watching our daughter at a swim meet. What do you suppose pushed this guy's button? He said his starter pistol went off when I didn't expect it. Boom! Heart pounding, gasping for air, drenched with sweat. His wife thought he's having a heart attack. He didn't know what was happening. It was what we call a panic attack, or a little milder anxiety attack. But here's what's happening. That neural network is still there. And a week later, a random gunshot goes off, you don't expect it, and you go on this roller coaster ride again. This is not PTSD. It's normal. How you deal with it will decide whether or not it becomes PTSD. Post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about PTSD. But how you deal with it will decide whether or not it becomes PTSD. Now, we got our heart rate chart here. And we've given permission to use this, and we'll do that one. We'll go back to that one. We've given permission to use this heart rate slide. There it is. There you go. And we've given permission to use that to a lot of textbooks and other studies. But it's really important to understand, this is sympathetic nervous system. You can do a set of wind sprints. You can get the heart pounded. You're gasping for air, and it's not the same as when it's sympathetic nervous system arousal. So look at our photograph now at the end there. Well, if you pull that up, thank you. These are two people coming down for the World Trade Center on 9/11 during the terrorist attacks on the towers. 3,000 people died that day, and both of the towers came down that day. Now, this young police officer is on his second trip down from the World Trade Center. Now, her face is beet red. That's called vasodilation. We've all seen that. Vigorous physical exercise, the blood vessels are wide open, and the body is pumping oxygen where it needs to go. His face is bone white. On the outside of the head, there's a pretty bad cut. He's been burned. He may have taken a blow to that left cheekbone. I have spent a lifetime studying the color images of frightened human beings. And I have never seen such a powerful example of vasodilation, that's her. We've all seen that. And vasoconstriction, that's him. Their heart rate could be exactly the same. The impact on their body is exactly the opposite. Now, folks, what the body's doing is at the pre-capillary stage, just before the capillaries, there's a shutdown of the blood flow. The artery and the body core can be holding up to twice as much blood. What happened to your blood pressure? Skyrockets. Just about any time you see stress-induced increase in blood pressure, it's vasoconstriction doing it. You don't have a lie detector, but you have a stress detector when they shake somebody's hand. The hand is cold and clammy. That's the early stages of vasoconstriction. And their handwriting might be like, and we have backup. And their handwriting might be a little sloppy. But as it gets worse and worse, the impact of this vasoconstriction gets more and more powerful. This is the most extreme vasoconstriction you will ever see. It's sometimes called the mask of fear when you see white across the eyes. When the whole face goes white, watch out. We tell our police officers, don't worry so much about the guy that's red with rage. You watch out for the one that's white with rage. Now, why is the body doing this? Well, it really limits the blood loss from the perimeter. As long as you don't hit the artery's buried deep. As long as you don't puncture the body core, you won't bleed out in the heat of battle. Does that sound like a survival mechanism? Let's say you're fighting a wolf. You're trying to cave the wolf's head in with a rock. If the wolf wins, your family's dog food. You're not fighting for your life. You're fighting for the survival of your genes, your tribe, your family. Now the wolf's jaws can shred your arm and not hit that artery. The claws can shred your chest and not puncture that body core. A long, sustained, vicious battle, you shred your arm, you shred your chest, you don't bleed out, you cave his head in with the rock, you won the battle, then you relax, and then what happens? The body will always backlash in the opposite direction. The wound that didn't bleed in the heat of battle will gush blood afterwards, and you bleed out and die. Today, we slap a tourniquet on the wound. We survive in the battle because of vasoconstriction. We survive after the battle because of our friend Mr. Tourniquet, right? But again, what's the price you pay for this? You've lost fine motor control, and you've lost a lot of rational thought. Now, we use the term the mask of fear. We talk about this as sympathetic nervous system or fear response. But there's a funny thing about courage. Courage. You can act happy, not really be happy. You can act sad, not really be sad. But if you act brave, you are brave. And this is a very brave young man. Now, he's been cut, he's been burned, he's exhausted, his eyes are rolled up in his head. Now, the sky behind him is filled with falling bodies. They were leaping from the towers in waves. As the flames, and they got too intense. The air above him is filled with smoke and flames. And the awful sound of those bodies hitting the sidewalk, smack, smack. People there said it was like a giant clapping his hands. It was echoing in his ears. But and people tried to stop him. They told him not to go. But like a mother who races in a burning building to save a beloved child, Christopher Amoroso will go up that building a third time. The building will fall, and he will not come home to his wife and baby tonight. He will never come home again. So why does one person go towards their death again and again? Well, let's set that aside, and let's come back to talking about re-experiencing that event. Go back to my Arkansas State Trooper, right? He's at a swim meet, gunshot goes off, he doesn't know what's going on. If those neurons are firing again. Now, imagine if he said, I can never go to another swim meet. I can't go to the range. I hate fireworks. Imagine if he spent the rest of his life trying to avoid loud noises. You can't do that. You will literally drive yourself crazy trying to not think about it. That's the path down post-traumatic stress disorder. You've got to make peace with the memory. You've got to separate the memory from the emotions. Now, in my book on combat, we talk about the breathing exercise, which is used very widely. But another tool that we found in recent years is a big swig of water. A big drink of water sends a message to the body that says, we're safe. And you're up here in fight or flight, sympathetic nervous system arousal, and you take a big drink of water, and it sends a message to the body that says, we're safe. We're safe. Look, a deer's being chased by a wolf. He stopped to get a drink, he's really thirsty. I can't get a drink, I'm being chased by a wolf. The fact that you stop and take that big swig of water sends a message to the body that says, we're safe. So from a therapeutic standpoint, very often we have individuals talk about their combat experience, and every time they start to become emotional, they stop, take a big swig of water, and regain control. From the very beginning, you separate the memory from the emotions. My police across America, now let's say a police officer is getting a witness statement from a victim of a crime. If that individual becomes emotional while they talk about what happened, A, you don't need all that drama. B, they're moving down the path of mental illness. They're starting to associate the memory with the emotions. But you put a bottle of water in front of them. You put about just the power of a gift. You put that bottle of water in front of them. And as that witness statement talks about what happened, every time they start to become emotional, make them stop, take a big swig of water. A, you're getting the calm, rational statement that you need. B, you send them down the path of mental wellness. From the very beginning, you're teaching them to separate the memory from the emotions. Now, if we can't stop this link, and the goal again is to separate the memory from the emotions. If we can't separate that with the breathing or the water, we got a lot of other things we can use. We're really, really good at treating PTSD, but you got to let us know. We ask everybody, how can you help other people if you can't help yourself? We're really, really good at treating it. But one of the techniques is called EMDR, eye movement, desensitization, reprogramming. Sounds like a mouthful. But what you do is you follow a visual stimulus with your eyes while you talk about what happened. And this midbrain that's creating these physiological responses is very simple, and it can only do one thing at a time. So while you're following that visual stimulus, you're able to talk about it without the emotions come along for the ride. So again, I trained an entire Air Force base just 2 years ago. The base theater was full, it was caught on camera and piped out across the base. It was their mental health week. And the commander of their mental health community, he said, before it started, he said, everybody here listen to me. He said, we're really, really good at treating PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. But you've got to let us know and let us help. So I want to talk to you real quickly now about post-traumatic stress. A lot of people have post-traumatic stress. happens all the time. But when it becomes post-traumatic stress disorder, then it's dysfunctional. It impairs your life in some critical manner. Interesting thing about PTSD. The DSM, the Bible of Psychology, tells us that it has to last at least 30 days. You can have every single one of the symptoms of PTSD, and it's normal. It's only when it lasts at least 30 days we say, okay, now we have an abnormal reaction. There's a really powerful movement that talk about post-traumatic stress injury. And that's a good movement, because you recover from an injury, and usually you're stronger. Hemingway said, life breaks everyone, and usually we're stronger in the broken spots. Yes. So, what I want you to think about now is the World War II generation. We call them the greatest generation. And they were not destroyed by combat. They were stronger from combat. You see, when you come out the other end of post-traumatic stress disorder, you have post-traumatic growth. And even those who don't have post-traumatic stress come out with post-traumatic growth. Nietzsche said, what doesn't kill us only makes us what? Stronger. And Nietzsche stole that from the Bible. In Romans chapter 5, the Bible says we glory in tribulation. Now this is a unique audience. We have chaplains here. We have people here from a religious college. And I'm going to talk just a little bit about faith matters. And the next book that I'm hoping Ollie will be able to work on is become quite a hit. I wrote on killing, I wrote on combat, then I wrote on spiritual combat. And I want to talk a few times from this spiritual perspective. But about 2,000 years before Nietzsche, the Bible said the same thing, post-traumatic growth. Folks, the idea of being stronger from the bad things in life is not a new idea. Waving the victim card, claiming a pity party, that's a new idea. And I tell you that Ukraine already has a new greatest generation. After 2 going on 3 years of war, there are men and women all around you that are strong from their experiences. And I tell you, in the years to come, there will be even more. At the end of World War II, we truly had what America called the greatest generation. And there was an era of prosperity and growth after that war, led by that greatest generation. And I tell you, you should have every expectation, and when we come out the other end of this war, Ukraine will be a stronger and better nation for the experience. Now, it was a terrible price of loss of lives. But you know, when I was preparing to come over here, I've been studying the war intensely, and then Ole invited me to come over here. I tried to look for historical examples. What's happening? Here is Ukraine, if you will, a Midland-sized small nation that absolutely clobbered, defeated the number 2 power in the world. You understand? We're a great nation. And we can look at the Spartans at Thermopylae, but they all died. Yeah? And Patton said, we want to let the other poor dumb bastard die for his country. Yeah? And we could look at the Winter War in Finland versus Russia, but that truly just lasted a season. It was the winter, and it didn't last much longer than that. We could look at Israel defeating nations all around them over and over again, outnumbered. But those wars were all very, very short. The best example I can find is the American Revolution. Maybe the only other significant comparison in human history. The United States defeated a world power. Now, you got to give credit. The French gave us a lot of money, and the Spanish gave us money. But the Americans did most of the bleeding and the dying. And it took years It wasn't easy. In this war, a lot of people are giving Ukraine the money and the tools that they need. But Ukraine is doing the bleeding and the dying. But we can look back at the American Revolution, a true struggle for freedom, and we can look at what's happening today and understand what an amazing and glorious event it is. Now, one of the darkest days of the American Revolution was the winter of 1776. George Washington's army was a volunteer army. And as the winter of 1776 came on, they just melted. They went home, many of them. And the ones who left were a hard horde of truly strong people. The idea of bloody footprints in the snow in Valley Forge was real. And Thomas Paine wrote these words in the winter of 1776. He said, "These are the times that try men's souls." Stop. Our souls are on trial. We're being judged. He said, "The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will shrink from their responsibilities in this hour. For those who answer the nation's call deserve the thanks of all men and women." And then he said this, "We have this consolation." Here's a big payoff. He said, "The more difficult the battle, the more glorious the victory." And you believe in who you are. You believe in what you do. Now, I want to talk a few minutes from a faith perspective. Now, this is not about religion. There's a reason why faith is one of the pillars of resiliency around the world. And the chaplains have a great deal to contribute, and our faith has a great deal to contribute. Now, this is not really even about religion. It's an existential question that every human being will ask. Our warriors in this battle will see terrible things. Our citizens who are being bombed and rocketed, they will see terrible things. And you can't help but ask the question, how could a loving God allow these things to happen? And the answer is really important. And the answer is very simple. We are not God's puppets. A loving Father would not stand over you every minute of every day for a lifetime and protect you from every bad thing that happens. You ever heard, if you truly love something, let it go? If it comes back, it's really yours. That's how much God loves us. He loves us enough to let us make our own decisions. That means a lot of people make bad decisions. A lot of bad things happen. You say, "God, why don't you do something?" He said, "I did. I sent you." And so once again, you believe in who you are. And shoring up and reaffirming our faith and understanding that. If you are a person of faith, then you can lean on that. You don't necessarily have to have that to survive combat. But if you're a person of faith, if you think that there might be eternity, then it's infinitely more important than anything else that could ever happen. In the end, a terrible thing happens to every human being. We die. No matter how hard you pray, everybody's going to die. In the end, every nation falls over my dead body. In the end, our sun will die, but eternity continues. Keep your eye on the big picture. Don't let the things of this world pull you down. And I'll tell you one last thing about faith. If you think there's a God, then you've got to play the game by God's rules. You can't set your own rules in this game. And your faith will tell you what the rules are for salvation. And you have to win the game by those rules. Ain't no other way. So you believe in who you are. You believe in what you do. And let's go back to that question. Why does one person go toward their death while thousands are running away? Well, let me begin with another question. What is the opposite of evil? What defeats evil is light defeats darkness. Well, let me talk to you about why I'm still in the fight. I'm 67 years old. I retired from the Army 26, going on 27 years ago. After 24 years in the Army, for the last 26 years, I've been out here on the road over 200 days a year. Waiting at home for me is my high school sweetheart, my bride of 49 years. She was 15 years old. I was 17 when I proposed to her. If you understand that we come from a place called Arkansas, that'll make a lot more sense to you. 2 years later, she married a crazy Army paratrooper. Been this ride with me for 49 years. I love her more than life itself. And yet, I get on my plane, I go to 1, 2, 3, 4 cities a week. I go to Ukraine for a week, and I get home a couple of nights, a little marital intimacy, and back on the road again. Because you see, the only people on earth more precious than my bride are our children, our grandchildren. I have a son who just retired after 27 years as a Spec Ops warrior, 10 combat deployments. Our nation's third highest award for valor is the Bronze Star. He's received 3 Bronze Stars. And he's retired, but now my grandson is in the Army, and he's in the fight. And we believe if we love our children, if we love our grandchildren, if we love our God, if we love our nation, we will give 100%. That's what love means. Love means the worse it gets, the harder you fight. And I submit to you the opposite of evil is love. Evil is the absence of love, just as darkness is the absence of light. And as we love our children, as we love our nation, as we love our God, the worse it gets, the harder we fight. That's what love means, yes? So let's go back and ask another question. What is the opposite of fear? What defeats fear?
Теж любов.
Let me talk to you about this. In nature, there's a powerful drive for self-preservation in every living creature. But the one place where that drive for self-preservation is overcome across many different species, in a mama critter, a mama animal, across many different species, the mama will die for one thing. What is it? Her babies, her young. In combat, we get into the battle because we believe. We believe our nation needs to be defended. We believe our children need to be defended. But in battle, men and women die for each other. Audie Murphy was the most decorated American soldier in World War II. Audie Murphy was asked one time why he did it. His answer was very simple. They were killing my friends. They were killing my friends. Ole, can you put that photograph up there? Come, please, officer, back up there again, please. Jesus said, greater love has no one than this, that they lay down their life for their friends. So what manner of love is this, that men and women will die for strangers? What manner of love is this, that men and women will die for people they never even met? But go back to the verse one more time. Greater love has no one than this, that they lay down their life for their friends. But there are many ways to lay down your life. There are many ways to lay down your life. And the opposite of fear is love. As water quenches fire, love defeats fear. Men die in battle for their comrades, their friends.
Абсолютно.
And greater love is no one than this, that they lay down their life for their friends. But remember, there are many ways to lay down your life. Now we're going to close the loop on all of that. Let me talk to you for a few minutes about one other absolutely vital dynamic. Now, we know about the critical incident debriefing. We know about the need to get together as soon as possible and talk about what happened. We don't want it to be too large of a group. Don't make it complex. It's just a group of individuals sitting down and talking about what happened. Ideally, they've all got a bottle of water in front of them, and each person talks through what happened, and anytime they start to become emotional, they stop, take a swig of water, regain control. But the other thing we've learned in recent years is the incredible value, the incredible need. Let's go ahead and cross out fear when we're at it. What we found in all these years is the incredible, desperate need for sleep. Throughout human history, when we were in war, we took the nights off. After the Battle of Gettysburg, on opposite sides of the valley, within sight of each other's campfires, the winners and the losers sat around the campfire, and what did they do that night? They talked about what happened. They did a critical incident debriefing. And throughout history, we always took the nights off, and we could debrief. And then combat changed to 24 hours. And it became very hard to take that time off. But whenever we got a break, we would sleep. But now we're finding something else is happening. Something really, really bad is happening. We're finding that our soldiers get some time off and they play video games. They watch movies. They're on their cell phone watching movies. They're on social media. They play video games. Folks, I trained an infantry battalion that was deploying to Iraq. The command sergeant major had been with a unit on a previous deployment. Now, the troops were on combat patrol during the day, and they were in kind of a barracks environment at night. They had video games, they had cell phones and movies. And the sergeant major said, I told the troops that it's lights out after 2200. It's lights out after 10 o'clock. The sergeant major said, if I find you playing video games after 10 o'clock, I will take your video games. He said, within a week, I had a closet overflowing with video games. You see, these are good soldiers. They would not disobey an order. He said, they cannot not play those damn games. They're so addictive and they're so seductive. And they're binge watching movies and all of that is terribly, terribly counterproductive to survival in combat. And we're being blindsided by it. We just recently had a Marine artillery battalion deployed to Syria. And for a couple of months, they fired an awful lot of fire missions. And they came home, and they're having all kinds of post-traumatic stress disorder, and suicides, and complications. They say, oh, it's firing those missions. No! In World War I and World War II, hundreds of thousands of artillerists, hundreds of thousands of men operating artillery, fired artillery every day for years on end, and they were fine. It wasn't the artillery doing it. It was the fact that they went back and they played video games and they watched movies when they should be going to sleep. And so I tell you, we need to understand something here. We now know, without a doubt, that sleep, lack of sleep, sleep deprivation, is a huge factor in suicide. Folks, every living organism has a powerful drive to self-preservation. To intentionally take your own life, you have to have profoundly impaired judgment. You understand? Now, alcohol and suicide have always been related. Alcohol creates impaired judgment. You make a bad decision, you never get a chance to rethink it. But you're only drunk for a little while. You're sleep deprived all the time. And it gets worse and worse. The primary impact of sleep deprivation is impaired judgment. It makes you stupid. It's just like being drunk. Now, if you're in the military, and somebody shows up to morning formation drunk, you kick his tail. Unless you're in the Russian army, then it's normal. But if somebody shows up sleep deprived because they play games all night long, they need their tail kicked. I want you to do an online search for sleep deprivation and suicide. And the link is huge. One of the best meta-studies on suicide said not only is sleep deprivation a key factor in suicide, it's the most remediable factor. We can't do much about your finances right now. We can't do much about your relationships. But we can get you a good night's sleep right now. So sleep deprivation is a key factor in suicide. And folks, worldwide, suicides have exploded. Teen suicides have exploded. Teenagers, they call them tweenagers, 10, 11, 12-year-old. Teenage girls' suicide rate in America has tripled per capita. It's tripled in just the last 10 years. So here's parenting 101 for the 21st century. When you send your kid to bed at night, take their cell phone away from them. No cell phone in the room, no laptop in the room. They have got to go to their room and sleep. The probability of your teenager or teenager taking their own life is huge. Now, a police officer came up to me during a break in one of my presentations. He said, I had a good girl. She was one of those teenagers. He said she was an A student. She said, Dad, it's embarrassing. You don't have to take my cell phone every night. You can trust me. He said, okay, I trust you. Keep your cell phone. He said a little while later, she took her life. He said, my little girl took her life. And we never knew the hell she was living in until we looked at the text messages on her cell phone. Night after night of ceaseless, relentless, vicious bullying. And you can't just ignore that. We're not wired that way. He said it was heart-rending to see her all night long, night after night, trying to defend herself, trying to find somebody to stand up for her. He said, I immediately understood my little girl was bullied to death. He said, what I didn't understand until now, she was sleep deprived, tormented, and bullied to death in front of my eyes, and I let it happen. He said, I can't ignore that text message in the middle of the night. How can we expect our kids to? He said, the one thing on earth I could have done for my little girl was take her phone every night, let her turn off all the bad stuff in this room. But who's going to be your mommy? Who's going to make you get that sleep? Now, sleep deprivation is a huge factor in a global explosion of suicide. It's also a huge factor in a global explosion of traffic deaths. Traffic deaths. Decade after decade, we brought traffic deaths down. Airbags, seatbelts, medical technology. And now worldwide, for the last decade, traffic deaths are exploding worldwide. What is the new factor worldwide? A global explosion of sleep deprivation. Do an online search for epidemic of sleep deprivation. Boom, it'll come right up over and over again. And one of the major killers of our adults and teens worldwide is traffic death and suicide. But there's one other thing. And this comes out of nowhere. It blindsided us. In America, we have an epidemic of opiate overdoses. Prescription opiates have always been there. Why are they drug of choice? Fentanyl is an opiate. In America, we lost 58,000 Americans in the entire Vietnam War. Every year, we lose 70,000 to 80,000 Americans from fentanyl overdose alone. Why opiates? Why are opiates a drug of choice? Well, sleep deprivation creates chronic pain. You don't sleep, you're gonna hurt. The tendons and muscles never fully relax. And so, folks, it's just one other thing that we're aware of. Sleep deprivation is a huge factor in Alzheimer's and dementia. Alzheimer's most common form of dementia. Lack of sleep and lack of deep cycle sleep is one of the major factors in Alzheimer's. Now, I commend to your attention a book that a lot of this information is called Why We Sleep by Dr. Walker. Simple, Why We Sleep. And you don't even have to buy the book. Look him up, Dr. Matthew Walker, Why We Sleep, and look at his website. And he has page after page after page of the latest research reinforcing all of this stuff. So, have you ever played a video game and suddenly it's 4 o'clock in the morning? You got no idea what the last 8 hours went. It's time to get up and get dressed and go to work. They do that on purpose. They have spent vast amounts of money designing a game that is very difficult to turn off. Social media, binge watching TV shows. The head of Netflix said their competitor is sleep. Do an online search, Netflix, competitor, sleep. It'll come right up. Their corporate policy is to steal your sleep. They don't care that they're killing people. They just want to sell their product. So again, as we look around after 23 years of war in the United States, we're beginning to realize the greatest challenge that lies before us is making sure that people get enough sleep. And it's true for parents. And you recognize the fact that it's a major factor in the equation. So let me go back now to this photograph very quickly, and then we'll open the floor for questions and try to handle within my area whatever I can. But folks, we're not all called to die like my young police officer, some desperate situation. But we are all called to serve. And remember that sometimes the greatest love is not to sacrifice your life, but to live a life of sacrifice. And you believe in who you are, and you believe in what you do. For you, the people of Ukraine, have inspired the world and have taught us that freedom and liberty is one of the most precious things on the planet. And it's worth fighting for. And it's worth sacrificing for. And that is one of the most vital lessons on the planet. As we love our nation, as we love our children, as we love our God, we give it everything we have. Do you understand? That's right. That's what love means. The worse it gets, the harder we fight. So with all that said, let's just take a few minutes now, and we got another 25 minutes or so of what was scheduled, and open the floor for any questions that people might have. Yes, please.
I have a question. So, sir,
let me do it on the mic, and this is going to be a little bit tricky, but can we have Anastasia? Would you? Yeah, Anastasia, will you come out and translate the question to me? Or and if you do it in English, then they need to translate it for everybody else.
okay.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, I tried these earlier and they weren't working. But I want you all to give a big hand to Anastasia. She has been amazing young lady, just an amazing young lady. She's been started with the translation process. She'll stay with us throughout the week. And it's really been pretty incredible. So please, ask your question, please, and then Anastasia and Oksana in the back will help us out. Big hand to Oksana in the back there, and then you got a wonderful contribution. Please, go ahead.
So I want to ask you in English, please,
Yeah.
because it's important for me. So, good evening, sir, for the first. For the second, I want to ask you about really face-to-face question, not the public. Do you kill somebody in your life?
Тож, дозвольте перекладу. Дуже радий, що мені дали можливість задати питання і хотів би задати його вам один на один, але все-таки там так. Чи ви вбивали когось?
Oh, the question is,
Have you killed somebody?
Have you killed
Have
somebody?
you killed
you know,
All your life.
no, and I say so in both my books. I've interviewed, there you go. I've interviewed more people that have been in combat than anybody in human history, by far. Nobody's ever had the opportunity I have. And 23 years of war and all the stuff I did before, talking to people every day. But my war was the Cold War. I got out in 1997. My son has 10 combat deployments. And the kids today and the young combatants in Ukraine, you'll see more in a week than I would have seen in my entire career. And I will tell you, for those of us who were in the Cold War, we are so damn proud of you. And so proud of those who have done and fought this battle and made this fight possible. I'm more of a scholar. I've had the honor to ask a lot of people. And the funny thing is, I enlisted in the 82nd Airborne Division. I was a young paratrooper in 1974. We had Vietnam veterans all around us. And we wanted to know what combat was like. And we'd ask them, and they wouldn't tell us. You know, that the response to killing. You know, it's very briefly about killing. But most people really feel good. You saved your life. You hit the target. You stopped a threat. You saved your own life. Something called survivor euphoria. If you could choose how you responded to killing, I think you'd want to feel good about it. The satisfaction of doing your job. And then, afterwards, people feel bad, they don't feel bad. And then they've got to rationalize all of that. That's my book on killing in a nutshell. But people wouldn't talk about this. It was a taboo topic. Now, I'm a young captain, an Army Ranger, en route to teach at West-Pойnті. And I would interview veterans, World War II veterans by the hundreds, Vietnam veterans by the hundreds. And they would tell me. And they would tell me things that they would never tell anybody else about. And so it's been quite a ride. And that's a simple answer to your question. But let me show you one other thing too. When we talk about things that people won't talk about. Now, when we talk about high levels of physiological arousal, sympathetic nervous system arousal, in one major survey in World War II, approximately half of the veterans of intense combat would admit that they wet themselves at one time or another. They just lost control of their bladder, they wet themselves. And those are the ones who admitted it. It was very, very common. In the same survey, about 20% of the veterans of intense combat in World War II would admit that they messed themselves. They crapped themselves. These are the ones who admit it. One old World War II veteran told me, he said, hell, Dave, all that proves is 80% were liars. Now, it's not for us to say it. It's not for us to call them liars. But if it happened to them, could it happen to us? And if you read history, the Greeks say it was almost universal. The Greeks say your bowels turn to water. It's called stress diarrhea. What's the Scotsman wear under his kilt? Nothing. He squats and squirts and moves on. between bad food and stress diarrhea. This is something very common throughout history. So I do a lot of work in hospitals. I teach psychiatric grand rounds. I did Department of Defense-wide psychiatric grand rounds, pumped out over 100 locations. But I get a chance to ask my medical personnel, my emergency room personnel, and I ask them what ratio of traffic accident victims have messed themselves. It's all over the map, but it's really, really common. And people are devastated by it. I'm talking lifelong, humiliated, shattered, devastated by it. And a little bit of psychological first aid goes a long way. You tell them that's your body's natural response. That happens all the time. Don't worry about it. And if 1 out of 5 of the kids in World War II could admit that it happened, and could it happen to us? That's mine. But people won't talk about it. They're not going to tell you about it. But I had a chance to talk with a Canadian unit and a bunch of their sergeants over a beer after my presentation. And all of them at one time or another, between bad food and stress diarrhea, every single one of those sergeants said that they crapped themselves at one time or another. And it's just something people don't talk about. So just recognize that there's value in examining these things. Now, let us all agree that we'd really rather avoid that. Nobody has this on the bucket list, right? And the way we avoid it is with modern training, stress inoculation, with state-of-the-art simulators and with force-on-force type engagements. We've created a degree of stress inoculation that never existed before. But just understand, there are things that are profoundly taboo, and people won't talk about it until you come to them. There's a West-Point psychology professor, an Army Ranger, and if somebody came up and asked you about your sex life, and intimate behavior and sex life, you'd tell them, get lost, right? But if Masters and Johnson or Kinsey are doing one of their academic studies, you might tell them. You might even tell them the truth. So the information that I've gathered from those who've been there is really the greatest privilege of my life. And the opportunity to share what I've gathered has really been an enormous privilege. And again, I'll tell you, to be of service to the magnificent men and women of Ukraine in this hour is an incredible privilege. So, next question. Oh, you just did a question, right?
Yes,
Let's see if somebody else would like to.
I want to tell you thank you so much.
Oh, yes.
It's really important information for our people.
Yes.
And God bless America.
Amen.
Glory to Ukraine.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Praise God. All right, so well done and well said, sir. Thank you. Here you go. Right there.
Translate, please. Я заступник командира військової частини.
I'm a deputy of the chief of
Військової частини.
of a military unit.
Sorry.
I'm a deputy of the chief of military unit.
Oh, yes, deputy chief of the military unit.
У мене 4,000 підлеглих.
I have 4,000 personnel.
Yes.
І частина з них постійно на війні.
And part of them are always on the front line.
Yes.
Запитання. Як часто потрібно проводити дебрифінги, тобто обговорення неправильних дій після бойового зіткнення, і які правильні слова повинен знайти саме молодший командир для підняття духу?
So how is correct to conduct debriefing with these people? Who should conduct it? Maybe some sergeant, and what else can be discussed?
All right, so the debriefing and the mechanics of the debriefing. Who should conduct it? We have mental health professionals there. I would tell you that we don't want to make it too complicated. Ideally, it should be done within a day of combat. We don't want to wait a long time if we can just cycle it out. But you're probably familiar with the AAR, the After-Action Review and Training. It's a standard part of NATO training. And it's really no different than the AAR. Ideally, the After-Action Review, the debriefing, would be done at the squad level. And ideally, it would be led by the squad leader. In the American Army, when we train our squad leaders, part of squad leader training is to do an AAR, an after-action review. If you get beyond a group of a squad, and our squad is usually 9 to 12 people, when you get beyond that, the numbers get very awkward. So it's a matter of everybody sitting down in a safe location with a bottle of water in front of them and talking about what happened. And each person talks, and they go all the way through. Everybody speaks, everybody's equal, everybody has a contribution to make. And it really doesn't need to be turned into something very complex. It's a simple matter of everybody talking about what happened. And people say, oh, I didn't realize what was happening. Well, I did this, well, I did that. And then this happened. Oh, we should have done this. We could have done that. Next time we'll do better. And so this AAR, this debriefing, ideally is done at the squad level. It's done as soon as we can. We fill in the memory gaps, sort out the memory distortions. But the new dynamic is everybody having a canteen of water, a bottle of water in front of them. And we kind of want to avoid coffee and tea because we want to be able to take a big gulp. And as everybody talked about what happened, we're just learning the lessons, filling in the facts. But if anybody starts to become emotional, stop, take a big gulp of water, and begin the process separating the memory from the emotions. Does that answer your question? Thank you, Colonel. Thank you. Other questions? Yes, there we got one over here. And I'm going to give you my mic. And we'll...
Доброго дня. Дякую вам велике за таку ґрунтовну розповідь.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for such a deep story and explanation.
Я курсантка Харківського національного університету імені Івана Кожедуба.
I'm a cadet of Kharkiv National Institute of the name of Kožedub.
В мене таке питання. Ви говорили про сон. І як, наприклад, працювати з людиною, яка повернулася з полю боя?
So I have a question about sleep. So, for example, what should we do with a person who just returned from the front line?
І їй постійно сняться сни з тим відчуттям, що вона знаходиться на полі бою. Цей сон її постійно переслідує. І ви говорили, що потрібно більше спати, а якщо, наприклад, от людина більше спить і їй більше цих жахів сниться, що робити в такій ситуації?
And this person has at night nightmares, not a good dream, and so how can we give this person opportunity to sleep if this person has nightmares? And
Thank you. Really, really an important question.
Дуже важливе питання.
When I do my full class,
Коли я проводжу мій урок,
I teach about sleep hygiene. And we're going to let Oksana go ahead and roll back in now.
sleep hygiene.
That's all right. All right. They got the headphones. All right. So I teach about sleep hygiene. And the first thing I want to tell you for this individual, we will spend a third of our life asleep. We want it to be good sleep. And we shouldn't hesitate to get help. Once again, how can we help other people if we can't help ourselves? and we want to have quality sleep. And this is the kind of thing that our mental health professionals can deal with. Now remember, you can have all the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. It's only when they last a month we say, okay, this is dysfunctional. This has gone beyond the normal. And so, you know, we can wait a month or so, and if it's still happening, it's one of the symptoms of PTSD. It's not necessarily post-traumatic stress disorder, but it's good to talk to our mental health community, mental health provider, and it's good to go to the sleep lab and get checked up if you need to do it. But when we talk about sleep hygiene, there are two nuggets of information I want to give you right now. As adults, we need at least 7 hours of sleep a night. You cannot train your body to get by on less air, or less water, or less food, and you cannot train your body to get by on less sleep. As adults, we need at least 7 hours of sleep. Now, the first critical piece of information I can give you is we are designed to sleep in total darkness. You may not get one more minute of sleep, but you will have quality sleep if you sleep in complete darkness. Now, it's really hard to get complete darkness. I'm a huge science geek. My favorite website is sciencedaily.com. I check it every day, through every category. And a major study in the sleep lab, totally dark room, the bathroom light is on and the door is shut. The light coming under the crack of the bathroom door is enough light to stop your body from producing the melatonin that helps us sleep. Melatonin is a hormone the body creates to make us sleep. And it's got to be in total darkness to create melatonin. And throughout human history, every night we went to sleep, it was dark. There were no street lights, there were no electric lights. It was dark. And then we invented the electric light bulb and the television and the video game. And so this melatonin is not being created. So one of the best tools that we have then is a sleep mask. In the US Army, we pass these sleep masks out by the fistful, but they're cheap little things. It's worth spending $20 and getting a good one. This particular mask is Amazon's #1 bestseller. It has, last I checked, over 85,000 5-star reviews for a sleep mask. I wish our books could get just a tenth that many. Yeah? My grandson went to college. Now, what's most likely to kill my grandson? #1, opiate overdoses. #2, suicide. #3, traffic deaths. What's the best thing I can do to protect my grandson? Make sure he gets a good night's sleep. He's heard my class, he's helped out my class. He goes off to college. I call him up and say, hey buddy, how you doing? Doing great, Grandpa. Critical question. Are you getting enough sleep? Yes, sir. Are you using your sleep mask? Yes, sir. Matter of fact, it got grody. I went online and ordered another one. So one of the best investments you can make is that sleep mask and get that quality of sleep. Now, there's another little thing that you can do. It's just a little thing, but it's pretty important. You can have white noise. There's actually an app called white noise. And there's other apps for your phone that can allow the sound of waves or the white noise, just some kind of a background noise that allows you to tune out a lot of other things. Now, one other thing, and I know I'm kind of fighting against the culture here, but we really have got to get our caffeine under control. The half-life of caffeine in your body is about 5 hours. That means the caffeine that you took at dinner at 5 o'clock is still at half strength want to go to bed at 10 p.m. And it's stopping us from getting good quality sleep. This global epidemic of caffeine abuse, these energy drinks. We've been at war now for going on 23 years. We're still in Iraq. For the first 15 years of war, the U.S. Armed Forces passed out those energy drinks like water. They gave them to us by the pallets. We gave them to the troops. Aren't we nice people? Then about 8 years ago, 2 major studies came up with the exact same conclusion. These are Department of Defense-wide studies. The energy drinks are poison. All there is in those things is a megadose of caffeine and sugar and some stuff to make you metabolize it quickly. It will give you a 1-hour burst of physical ability, then you crash. Before a PT test, before an athletic event, it's not a bad idea, but then you crash. Don't count on doing much after that. The second energy drink feels good for about 10 minutes. The third one feels good for 5 minutes. But after the first energy drink, all you're doing is building up your addiction and your tolerance to caffeine. In an academic environment, the one taking the most energy drinks were the ones with the worst grades. Those energy drinks were one of the best predictors of academic failure. In a tactical environment, the one taking the most energy drinks were the ones most likely to nod off on the job. In a tactical environment, the energy drinks were one of the greatest predictors of tactical failure. And those things are poison. And we got to get it under control. 1 or 2 normal-sized cups of coffee at breakfast or tea. 1 or 2 normal-sized cups of coffee at tea at lunch. Maybe a hit, that hour after lunch, you need that boost. Then switch to decaf, have all you want. The research is telling us coffee drinkers are living several years longer than non-coffee drinkers. Some of y'all say I must be immortal then. Yeah? But I think coffee drinkers are doing so good because the other stuff is so bad. The sodas are sugary poison. The diet sodas are chemical poison. There's nothing wrong with one soda. There's nothing wrong with one diet soda. But if that's your only form of hydration, you've got a problem. And we're in the middle of this global epidemic of caffeine abuse. And the caffeine is stopping you from getting good quality sleep. Now folks, again, going back to Dr. Matthew Walker's book, and the research is overwhelming. Lack of deep cycle sleep is the greatest predictor of pain, and is the greatest predictor of Alzheimer's, dementia. And the caffeine is stopping you from getting that deep cycle sleep. You say, well, I've built up a tolerance to caffeine. I've habituated myself. That's right. So that means when you need it, caffeine's not there for you. And all you've done is taken this useful drug and abused it. And when you need it, it's not there for you. So I'd ask you to do your own research. Cut off caffeine, start keeping track of what's going on. Cut off caffeine shortly after lunch and see what happens. And look at your cycle of sleep. Now, if I were king and could give you all one gift, other than to turn on the flow of money from our nation and give you the resources you need, I would give everybody a fitness tracker. And I would have everybody track their sleep and experiment. Cut off caffeine after lunch for a week and see what it does to your quality of sleep and your length of sleep. Look at other things you can do. See how the white noise does. As we get older, the body produces less melatonin. And so a little baby dose of melatonin, and we get in our 30s, is not a bad idea. Start with the smallest dose you can find. A little bit of melatonin goes a long way. Touch base with your medical professional. But these are things that we can do now. So just to recap. Number 1, you may not get 1 more minute of sleep. You get quality sleep if you do it in total darkness. And number 2, cut off caffeine shortly after lunch, and it will rock your world. So these are things that we can do right now. We may not get 1 more minute of sleep, but aim for 7 hours of sleep as a minimum. Now, I shoot for a little bit more than that. There's nights when I don't get much sleep at all. I'm on the road and my plane's delayed or whatever. There's nights when I drive all night long because my plane is canceled and I roll up and I present all day long. I could do that for one day. But then that night I get as much sleep as I can, you understand? Pace yourself over the long game. We need four-quarter players. We need seasoned players. And sleep management is something every one of us can do right now. The heart of resiliency is simply this. We study people who do not get PTSD. What kind of people don't get PTSD? Well, Viktor Frankl, who walked out of a Nazi death camp and wrote some pretty important books. He was a human skeleton walking out of a Nazi death camp with enduring unthinkable evil, and he did not have PTSD. And Viktor Frankl said, I realized the only thing in the universe these Nazi bastards couldn't control is how I choose to respond. You cannot control anything in the universe except one thing, how you choose to respond. And once you really grasp that, it's really the core of Roman Stoicism, but it's completely in alignment with Christianity. Once you identify that the only thing in the universe you can control is yourself, it's okay to complain about what's happening in the world. It's okay to complain about what other people are doing. But there is nothing in the universe you can control except what? Yourself. And if we give way to bitterness, if we give way to cynicism or complacency or denial, that's the one thing you can control. And you've given the world a victory with your own hand. And so folks, I'll tell you one more thing that we're trying to teach across armed forces and across law enforcement. We talk about losing your temper. You don't lose your temper. You give it away. It's the only thing in the universe you can control. Now, that's easy to say, but it ain't so easy to do. But the first step is understanding that nobody respects our temper tantrum. Leadership is never about screaming at people. Leadership is about remaining calm. Nobody respects our temper tantrum as leaders. They respect our calm. If the day-to-day pissant things make you blow your cool, when things are going to hell and people are dying, you don't have a prayer. So identify the things you can control and do them. And that starts tonight. Make that room as dark as you can. Cut off caffeine shortly after lunch. Check out that white noise generator. And just take control of the things you can control, starting tonight, and let go of everything else. Well, with that said, now we've hit kind of the end point that was scheduled for this. And I just want to wrap up the day with one more opportunity to tell you. Oh, yes, Colonel, please, go ahead.
Допоможе мій товариш з перекладом.
Sir, good evening. I want to try to translate the information from my chief to you without interpreter because this is important for us to communicate with you on the native language.
Ми дуже вдячні за лекцію і дуже вдячні за те, що в такий важкий час ви саме в Україні.
Thank you for your presentation and thank you for your visit to Ukraine in such a hard time.
Наша команда – це команда військових і психологів. Ми проводимо багато івентів для хлопців, які повернулися з війни.
Our team is the team of military men and psychologists, and we doing different activities and events to our people who come back from frontline.
Це змагання з перешкодами, але це перш за все змагання сам з собою.
This event we run this event with the hard obstacles, but first of all this event with oneself.
І ми хочемо вам подарувати від незламних військових України подарунок.
And we want to give you a gift from our unbreakable people who from our unbreakable people.
Це не просто одяг, це одяг сильних українців.
This is not only clothes, this is the clothes of strong Ukrainian. Yes.
So that's it. Slava Ukraine.